Well, meanwhile, Stefan, Yasmin, and Metin are coming to join us. I can share a little bit about myself and about the objective of this panel together. So I'm Florencia. I'm calling from Uruguay, South America. Beautiful morning here. First of all, I want to thank BMW Foundation and the organizers for the opportunity to talk about such a dear and important topic. We're going to be talking about intrapreneurs leading change from within. Now, yes, I have the full panel with me, Metin, Yasmin, and Stefan. And intrapreneurship may be a word that is super familiar for you, or maybe it's the first time you're like entre. So intrapreneurs, what are we talking about? About the people that are inside existing influential institutions and behave with the passion, the energy of an entrepreneur in looking for opportunities, for new ideas, new ways of doing things, but also leveraging the muscle of the existing organization. So the brand, the distribution capacity, the assets that are already in place. This is a very special type of leadership. It requires stepping up, questioning the way things are done, learning how to drive change from within an existing machine that it's already working. I personally co-founded the League of Intrapreneurs 8 years ago, looking for what is that type of leadership. And we have found intrapreneurs in over 28 countries in the world. And we created a community for learning, because you can only learn how to do this by doing and sharing the experiences. So today, here we have 3 amazing intrapreneurs that are going to share with us their experiences, their stories, and what they have learned on their path. The idea is that we can inspire you, both as an intrapreneur, if you feel like one, or if you can support space for this to happen in your organization or organizations that you have connections with. And why is this so important today when we look at where we are standing in the world? We know we have a big social challenge, a big innovation challenge to change the system the way we would like to see it work. And to get there, we need to shift large organizations that have been established for years in a way of doing things. So really what intrapreneurs are doing is leading this change from within. Apparently my mic got a little disengaged, so I'm not sure how much you lost. But I guess I just want to start by listening to your stories, Metin, Yasmin, and Stefan. So the idea is you have 2 minutes to share a little bit about yourselves. Who are you? What are you working on? Because you're working in very different things. And what drives you? And I'm going to start with you, Metin, if you can share about yourself.
Stefan and Yasmin is quite young. I'm old. 2 minutes for me is not enough just to start. But I'll try, okay? I'm an engineer by training, and I'm a terrible entrepreneur. I started my career in Aselsan. Company was in defense industry. Over there, I wrote a software, but when I see the opportunity, I try to create my own company with a big failure, because we did everything right. We wrote the software, we sell the software, but we couldn't get our money. So I got my first lesson. Collection is a big issue. So I thought entrepreneurship is not for me. So I went to States, worked for a number of companies over there. It was days there were a lot of companies built up, founded on the back of a napkin. So I saw how well this system works. So when I come back to Turkey to work with Vestel, I tried to apply some of the same principles to the company. So we started a number of projects, including an investment arm of Vestel. We started entrepreneurship program. We started spin-off program. Now we're running all of them in parallel, and we start seeing the results. So what drives me is I was a terrible entrepreneur. No one helped me along the way. So I thought I could be someone else's guidance in this journey and try to pass all this experience to them.
Thank you, Metin. And I'm sorry I'm facing some technical difficulties to listen to what you're saying, but I'm going to pass it on because as long as the rest is listening, that's awesome. So maybe, Yasmin, if I can give you now your time to share.
Thank you, Flo. It's wonderful to be here with you and my fellow panelists, Metin and Stefan. I am not an engineer. I'm an economist by training with an MBA, and I currently work with Özyeğin Social Investments, which is a network of foundations and civil society organizations that primarily focus on education. And some of my entrepreneurial experience, and the one that I want to share with you today actually, comes from one of these organizations called AÇEV. It stands for the Mother-Child Education Foundation. But prior to joining AÇEV and the grander Özyeğin Social Investments umbrella, I was actually on a very different path. I was working as a management consultant at at Deloitte's New York City offices, primarily with biotechnology companies and pharmaceutical companies. And then I took a brief sabbatical after working at Deloitte for about 5-6 years. And I really questioned what Flo asked us before. She's fallen off the screen right now, but I'll continue. What fired me, I figured, was really this willingness and this wish to contribute to creating a more socially and economically equitable community world. And I thought the key to that was really education, and that I wanted to do that back in Turkey, which is where I was born and lived until I was 17, before I took off for the US to do my studies. Welcome back. And so I came back to Turkey and I joined AÇEV and then expanded into the larger Özyeğin Social Investments umbrella. Function-wise, I've found out that I really enjoy thinking through and designing and developing new products and services, which in my case can also mean policy building and alliance building among very different stakeholders, such as civil society organizations, governments, academia, and the private sector. So my work with Özyeğin Social Investments has really enabled me to do that for a nonprofit purpose. And I guess some of what I do now can be called social entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Yasmin. And now I can hear you all. I'm so excited.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it was challenging. And finally, Stefan, last but not least, can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Thank you very much, Flor. Appreciate to be with you, Yasmin and Metin, and good afternoon, all of you outside there. You see, this is very much related to entrepreneurship here because it's all about overcoming hurdles, which are just put in front of you. So happy to share a little bit about myself. First of all, I consider myself as a humble human, let's say. And out of that, I'm a proud father of 2 children, married. I feel myself be a European, I would say, living in Germany, outside of Cologne in the countryside. Professionally, I'm in business since more than 20 years in various large industries, starting from finance via the utility sector. I spent 2.5 years in a company which was focusing on healthcare as well as agricultural development. And I'm now working from Covestro, which is a company in the chemical sector, on sustainable development. And here are kind of on my pathway through the 4 big industries, a lot of periods in which I felt I tried to work and to change from within, even though during those days I never thought about calling myself an entrepreneur or even have an opportunity to speak about my experiences in that regard. It was quite often a fight against closed doors, and I'm happy to share a little bit more over the period of this nice session. Looking forward to that. Back to you, Flor.
Thank you, Stefan. And maybe I think you made a great path into, there's not a position, like you're not hired to be an entrepreneur, which actually, I have to say though, more and more, if you looked in LinkedIn and how people talk about their positions, now I'm seeing new things like director of entrepreneurship. And Metin, I think like you have a very interesting perspective on this, on creating an environment and catalyzing this inside a company. So maybe as we move this conversation, I would invite if you can share a specific example of what is it exactly that you are doing to drive this entrepreneurial energy, and what are some key learnings that you can share with the audience around what was key in this process.
Sure.
So go ahead, Metin.
Sure. Let me start with a personal story. When When I joined my first company, right fresh out of school, year after I started my own, kind of started my own company inside while I was working in my previous one. So after a while, someone learned that someone from that company is trying to do something on the side. And they asked me to find that person. So I was the one, and I had to find myself. So it was a very difficult task, as you can imagine. Those days, it was a sin to do anything on the side. It was almost betrayal to a company to do something, such a thing. But today, we encourage people to do so. We encourage people to go after their dreams. We give them sabbatical time off to try some of the entrepreneurship dreams. But instead of doing it, random shots around the place, we want to do it in an organized manner, because it's not only physical, it's a mental to be an entrepreneur, to try to, push the limits. You have to have the right mindset. So it takes a little bit of training, takes a little bit of encouragement. So we thought, we can create a program. It's like any other, but a little bit of a personal touch. We call it Parlak Fikir, it's the brightest idea kind of program. When said that we can take interested people inside to this program, train them for months, show them how to do whatever they want to do it. Get them talk to other entrepreneurs, get them talk to mentors, and be ready. Then decide whether this is something that they want to do or they want to continue their own work. And the way the program created was another interesting story. I often get invited to startup or idea events, and I get to jury the event. And I start seeing our own people, our own employees attending these events and kind of talking about their startup. And you can imagine what an awkward moment when they see me and when I see them. So it was a burning desire inside the company anyway. We just show them the way. It is what it is. So you have to work with these people. Obviously, a company like ours and many others are trying to hire best and the brightest. What are you going to do with this best and brightest? You have to empower them. So we call this program, in a way, empowerment program. You find your own way. But along the way, obviously, there are a lot of hurdles. There are a lot of barriers. It's not easy for everyone in the organization to align with you. Imagine a mid-level manager. Some of your people, some of the teammates in your team is trying to do something else, and that impacts your performance. But we're trying to show them, look at the big picture. This is for the company's good. It's going to be better for all of us, not only for that single group. So we thought we can get these people involved. So all the managers of all the attendees participate in the program. When a person has a success at the end of the program, manager gets credit for that too. So it has to organize, it has to have a structure, it has to have a process. That's immediately we have seen from all of the work, and we try to set the framework for that. We have two of our graduates already in the market. They have their own company. We're the partner of it. We have share in their company. They're quite successful. They already sold their product. They're already in the process of getting investment from other investors. So we showed all of the corporates that in Turkey, this works, and this makes people happy. Last maybe words from this program is now the newcomers to company, fresh graduates out of school, are asking about this program. They're talking about this program. They say, what do you have in company for me? How am I going to grow in this company? What kind of experiences I'll get from your company? So entrepreneurship is real and it's working. So I invite everybody to at least try it once in their lifetime.
Thank you, Metin. That's so important. I guess what you're saying is entrepreneurship happened always.
Yep.
It's always been there. So we always had people inside organizations. The point that we're trying to make here is, listen, we are at a moment that we can officialize it. We can allow for this to happen inside organizations, and we need to rethink the way we organize ourselves in our relationship, employee organizations. So thanks for that. That's a really good provocation in what we need to really shift the system. Now, maybe Yasmin, if you want to share your personal experience around trying to build something inside an organization that maybe didn't have all of that planned for you already.
Yes, with pleasure. So under the Özdin Social Investments umbrella, we actually run a bunch of experiments, entrepreneurial experiments. Some worked, some didn't work. But the one I'll share with you today is actually the launch of an educational toy line that we did at the Mother-Child Education Foundation. And it really stemmed from a need that we saw when we were doing actually our mission tells us to do as the Mother-Child Education Foundation, which is, so the primary function is actually developing and then implementing these parenting programs for mothers and fathers of young children. And one of the many things that we were saying to the parents in these programs was, spend quality time with your child, that play is a very important part of a child's learning process, and that, good educational toys or tools can be a really good conduit to enable that. But when we looked at the market, and especially the ones at the more affordable prices, what we saw was that the toys and the educational materials out there were not really, first of all, they permeated a lot of these gender stereotypes that we wanted to avoid. Lots of guns and violence for boys, and then these pink skirted dolls for girls. There wasn't much of a substance in terms of, or adequate substance in terms of, cognitive, physical, and socio-emotional development needs of the child. They didn't really allow for parents and children to play together, or, other caregivers and the children to play together. So we thought, why don't we try to do this ourselves? And we did. At the end, in 2 years of a time, we launched 7 products, 7 educational materials or toys, and 3 of them became hits, or they were the more popular ones, and they've continued to kind of sell themselves, as we say in Turkish, because we put basically 0 funds to the marketing and sales of these toys. We just kind of put them on Acev's website, and we had a couple of retailers that we already had some connections with, so we placed it with them. And in the end, I would say it was a successful pilot, because we did end up producing at affordable price points these toys that were very gender sensitive, locally and ecologically produced. They really allowed for this intergenerational type of play, and they were really rich with all of these cognitive and socio-emotional and physical development needs of the child, because that's our expertise. So the products, we learned that they were selling through word of mouth most of the time. The parents really enjoyed these products, and they were actually recommending it to their friends and their children. And so in that sense, we were successful in creating this product line that, created value for the customer and the community. And also it ended up providing this continuous stream of income for Acev, for the Mother-Child Education Foundation. And for anyone who's worked in civil society, it's this unrestricted, non-contingent fund that you can use wherever you want. So it was good for the organization as well. It created value for the organization. But it wasn't successful in the sense that we couldn't scale it up, because we were the software of this toy. We bring the vision and what needs to be in the content, but we really needed a stable, good manufacturing partner who shared our vision and who was willing to kind of invest in that design process to make a toy or educational material at an affordable price point, and then actually manufacture it and share with us in the marketing and sales functions of that as well. So for me, that was, any business savvy person would have maybe thought of this before, but that partnership was very important, I think, to scale it up. And then also we're a large foundation when you look at civil society organizations in general, but we're not a huge group of people. It's a restricted amount of human resources and funding. And I was only spending maybe like 5, max 10% of my time. So are my colleagues, who work at Acev, these child development experts and psychologists. So you can't really have this creative process, this design and rolling out of products process on a continuous basis if you don't have a dedicated team. So those were some of the learnings that came out of it. but I'll just end on a very positive note. I was actually very pleasantly surprised to learn that my colleagues at Achev actually really enjoyed this creative process. It was a lot of new learning for them because we ended up working with these experts from outside the organizations. They were able to work among departments with people that they didn't work before. And we, even hosted these Harvard Business School volunteer students for 2 summers who actually really helped us with the gamification of some of these products. So that was a very creative process that my fellow colleagues also enjoyed, that allowed them to do a lot of learning as well. So it's good entrepreneurship.
Yeah, no, thank you, Yasmin. I think you brought such important points. First of all, just to really emphasize the need for collaboration. As an entrepreneur, you're usually proposing something that is not the core day-to-day of your organization. So that is what makes it tricky, because some people are like, why would we do that? We should focus on what we do usually. So there's always this tangential space that goes beyond the usual business as usual or whatever operations as usual.
Exactly.
And what is so important, which is how you bring that collaborative mindset from the start, because that's key in order to really thrive in that entrepreneurial capacity. So thanks for bringing that, and also showing how this is so relevant inside nonprofit organizations, also as a way to think beyond. And now, Stefan, if you want to share with us your journey as an entrepreneur in Covestro and the circular economy, and I know you're going to bring to share with us.
Yeah, happy to do so. I mean, there are a lot of kind of pieces of that journey I could refer to, and also happy to speak a little bit about the work at Covestro, even though I would say what we have started kind of 10-15 years ago, very much from an entrepreneurial mindset, kind of bringing up unconventional thoughts into an organization, come up with very broad leapfrogging ideas, where people said, we cannot believe in that, that's stupid, don't waste my time going into that. I mean, these were the reactions on making big and hard to abate industry CO2 neutral 10-15 years ago. And nowadays, when you look at the chemical sector, all large chemical companies try to become more circular and reduce their CO2 emissions significantly up to a level of carbon neutrality. I would like to refer to another example here of my journey, because it quite nicely shows actually on one topic in 2 companies where it can go. And I have to say, first of all, I was always very much inspired by the fact that we are, from a Western corporate perspective, denying kind of the potentials in low-income markets. If you walk through a big, large city somewhere in Europe, including Turkey, you will find a lot of brands. And if you look into the final customers who can buy those brands, we are talking about 40% of world population who's able to do that. So kind of one of the big inspirational questions I'm carrying with me since 15 years is, how can we develop business in low income market segments? I'm not talking about CSR, I'm not talking about donations into those, but really about sustainable business developments, where you probably link some governmental money into the pockets of the final end consumers to allow them to afford certain projects. Or even products. Having said this, in the utility sector, I was with one company which strongly on gas, coal-fired power plants and nuclear, very central energy generation, as you can imagine. And I came up with the proposal to go for small, decentralized, renewable energy solutions. And then on top, I said, let's start focusing with this new business on market segments where you would usually, from a stereotype perspective in Germany, would think you cannot make money. So it was a real view on small solar PV projects combined with hydro and wind power in countries like India, Africa, and other countries in Southeast Asia. And it took me 2.5 years inside the company and finding people who joined me in pushing that topic forward, until we got a 7-digit euro amount from Board of Management to execute first projects in Tanzania. So luckily we made it. So here I realized it's worse to even if the walls are very thick, it's worse to keep on pushing for a topic which then over time, interesting wise, became strategically very important, because as you know, in Europe we are much more talking now about decentralized energy generation, and the renewable energy production has become more and more important, and we could get some really good learnings out of that program we were running then in various countries outside of Europe. I thought at that point of time I would like to even increase the impact, and that's why I joined a company in the pharmaceutical and agricultural sector, where I really felt with their product portfolio we even have a better chance to access the low income markets. And I specialized very much here on access to medicine, where it was all about bringing medicines which were out of patent at a much lower affordable price to people in low income markets to benefit them with medical treatments. And even if I could show to in late stage board of management that we would be able to earn more money with this approach, there was kind of a rule in the game which I didn't see, which was about the pharmaceutical profit margin. And here it was the fact that it's not about the volume you sell, it's about the profit margin you earn per product you bring in market. Because investors from a capital market view said it's not a problem for such a company to sell more of the products because of growing world population, but it's important that you have the highest profit margin possible in this specific treatment segment. Ultimately, to make the long story short, I failed in this company to carry this low income bottom of the pyramid approach forward, because the barriers were not inside, they were in the system. And I guess these are kind of leading to the key takeaways for me. Again, if you see the chance to change something within your institution, be it an NGO, be it a governmental institution or a corporate player, I truly encourage to stay focused, to join alliances, as Yasmin nicely indicated, also seek for partners. And how do you do that? Not if in talking to their role, quite often talking to the personal level. So it's sometimes really about having a beer with a senior manager in the early evening and explain them, hey, you are a father, you're a global citizen. It would be interesting if I have your support for my project, and you make them just part of the success story. If the challenge is outside of your area of influence, then we speak really about system innovation, and then it's really more about, can you bring more company representatives or even up to a level of associations together to drive this change. And as you can imagine, this is even harder, but I wouldn't call it impossible.
Thank you for that. No, just being true to this journey and knowing that sometimes, I love how you say, well, I failed on this. Well, actually, I think first of all, and that's one thing to mention here, that it's important. A good entrepreneur will fail, because if not, you're not trying too hard. I've heard in the league community many times, and I love it. It's like, if you're hearing too many yes, and things are easy for you, then you're probably not pushing the boundaries and you're doing what is expected. So just to be aware that in this journey, when we are going through this, it does require a lot of personal insight as well, and work in your own capacity to lead change. We talk many times about resilience, about the capacity to be held strong and to feel and just be true to why you are doing this. So as a next question, I would love to go deeper into your personal whys and what has been important for you in your journey to keep your energy up and to keep your capacity up in making this happen. And maybe just to shift a little bit the energy, Yasmin, this is for you. To start.
Thank you, Flo. So for me, it's really this potential to create intellectual property and something that has value to, the community that we serve through as the social investments, basically. That's really that creative process, and the result that you actually end up providing a product or service that will be good for other people, that is needed by other people, has really been what's been firing me in my entrepreneurial endeavors within this umbrella.
And Yasmin, when things get hard, where do you take your resilience? Like, where do you access, how do you energize yourself?
Well, I'm actually an introvert, so I do tend to get into my little room and think thoroughly. But I've also really enjoyed the reactions of my colleagues, that they are enjoying this creative process, that we are creating something together that is apart from what our job descriptions say. That collective behavior, it's actually so good for the companies. And I think all companies should have something like Vestal, where they actually galvanize entrepreneurship in a systematic way. It's really good for human resources development. It's good for your end product or service, for creation of that IP.
Thank you. Metin, you want to bring your perspective. Where do you drive your energy from? And what drives you? And you're on mute, if you can unmute yourself.
My energy comes from people. I'm not an entrepreneur. I make those people entrepreneur. So when they're successful, I feel better. I have lectures at a university. We teach entrepreneurship and interactive marketing. And inside the company, we have programs that we turn people into entrepreneurs. But the best thing you can hear, years after you touch somebody's life, they come back to you and say that, well, remember those days? We listened to you and did this, and look where I am. That is the best award you can get from anybody. So most of us in this business for track record, for touching other people's lives. So, and I think there's very much a social aspect of it. So we always talk about making sustainable development, sustainable efforts. Effort just keep going by themselves when you're out of the picture. So that's what we want to see. That's what these things drives me every morning. And talk about failures and barriers. We have so many of them, and we've been keep hitting walls every day in almost every effort. But little things, little dents in the wall, even those make people happy. So as soon as the people that we touch is successful, we feel successful. So I took the easy route.
Thank you, Metin. And the little things. That's what I've noticed, because sometimes what you're putting yourself into has a lot of vision, but it will take long. Stefan, you were saying 2.5 years to get the approval. So how do you keep your energy there, when you're going through these processes? So Stefan, what is your take on this or your learning?
First of all, I guess you can fail without it's been your fault. Yeah. So, there are very often reasons in the system or in the company why things don't work. And if you take this so very personally as a personal, you will get very quickly frustrated. But the major piece in my case on resilience and where does my fire come from, this is really in my core belief around the importance of sustainability in terms of development, and really in leveraging the power of business for sustainable development. And my background is also economics and management. Studied at Cologne University, and I had the chance to also study in Scandinavia during that time. And it was quite eye-opening there when you think about just adding a dimension on social impact and environmental impact on a pure profit maximization and business development perspective, which I was used to by university and also from my background in the finance sector. So I came back from Scandinavia and asked myself the question, where can I find at university, but also where can I find in the finance sector where I already was in at that time, this focus on the social impact and environmental impact while we are creating profitable business. Yeah? And I couldn't find it, neither in the lectures nor in the business strategies. And that was the moment where I can very well remember where a very big fire started to burn within Stefan. Yeah? And I'm very often referring to that because I deeply thought about, where do you want to spend lifetime? Yeah? Do you want to stay just in the pure profit maximization, whatever strategy department of any large industrial company, or do you want to add something more which is closer to your personal values as a human? And I clearly discovered the latter, and this is giving me a lot of power nowadays as well, because I can clearly say this is deeply rooted. This is, I can even some of the power I can refer back to my youth and strong connection to nature and the areas in nature where I grew up. But sometimes it's tough, and there's a big risk that you lose yourself in the details of the work you aim for. Sometimes it's hard to deal with immediate frustration. You just have. Yeah, failure is something you need to consider as very, very positive. And then it's very much about people, as Metin said as well. Yeah, so the response from others, to see that you're not alone in your thinking, to see that there's even communities like the League of Entrepreneurs, which brings those kind of entrepreneurs together for sharing their experiences, refreshing the minds, empowering each other. This is nice to see how this has developed over the recent years. So you're definitely not alone, and this allows you also to put a lot of energy into it.
Well, it's always easier to do the journey together. I guess it doesn't matter where you get to, but if you do it together, the journey will be much better. But I think you're bringing a very important point as a closing, which is not only the change for the change, but it's actually for what? Or what are we aiming for? And what is driving us in that change? And to make that, I've found outstanding in these years looking at entrepreneurs, there's such an important work to be done understanding your role in the system. And not recognizing this is not from ego, but actually from a place of what can we do for the better together and how can I make that happen? Understanding this is not about starting something that will have your name and last name and everyone will get to know you. Actually, some of the best entrepreneurial journeys are those that no one has any clue who started it. So just to bear that in mind as you are getting in this process and promoting this. And with that, I really want to thank you, Metin, Yasmin, and Stefan, for being so open in sharing your real drive, what you're working on. Hopefully it has inspired a lot of people in thinking about your own journeys and where you are and how you can bring more of your purpose and your essence to it. And I just want to make a final invitation. 2nd week of June, we are doing Global Entrepreneur Week. So you're all invited to come. So if this is a topic that really touched you, that you feel like you want to learn more as a leader promoting this in your organization, as an entrepreneur, as a partner, this is a space for us to go deeper in this conversation. So just like 30 seconds of what you want to leave before we go. Stefan, Yasmin, Metin, in that order. Go, Stefan, your 30 seconds, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I feel it's important to highlight that we don't perceive us as something like heroes. Yeah, I mean, there's a tendency that we kind of celebrate them as someone very special having achieved something substantial. I consider this much more as an required integral part of, in my regard, business development. Yeah? And if I reflect just about where I was position-wise when I started my career with this entrepreneurial spirit and where I'm now with corporate strategy. So it's and here I'm a responsible position where I can really drive the corporate strategy of the company and try and if I can encourage, try to get to your inner belief. So what do you believe in? What do you want to influence in your given lifetime here and become part of the system? Thank you.
Let me follow up on that. I really appreciate that, Flo. You put entrepreneurship into a structure, and Metin and Stefan shared all their experiences. I think it's really important to coin these terms because then you can actually get people to think through what they're doing in these frameworks, and then actually that results in more allocation of resources usually when something is coined as a term like that. Back when I was doing my MBA, there was no such thing as entrepreneurship. This was between 2004 and 2006. Social enterprise was just beginning to come up as an idea. And I realized in my 11 years with Özyeğin Social Investments how big it's become and how many people and financial resources have been flowing into this space of social entrepreneurship. So now I think it's entrepreneurship's time, and I've really appreciated hearing from all of your experiences.
Great few words. We often think that entrepreneurship is only applicable to college dropouts who catch the success at early ages. It's not always the case, okay? People who are listening to us, you can do it too. Do it for yourself. Do it for your community. And just want to leave you with one last question. What have you got to lose?
Nothing better for closing. What do you have to lose? So wherever you are, just connect with your passion, what you want, and make your space and your entrepreneurial journey closer to whatever is relevant for you. Thank you. Thank you for this space, and bye-bye. Let's pass it on for the next session.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.